That was the boring stuff.
Yeah. So recording, yes, we are beginning to record. And again, I'm here with Tricia Parido, and we have started a fascinating conversation about addiction and recovery. So when we say recovery, we should probably be really clear that we're talking about a lifelong process of, or at least a process of recovering from an addiction or multiple addictions. So when we say recovery, that's what we mean, because I know some people don't, um if they're not in around that jargon, that doesn't really click, but that's what we mean.
Yeah, and even broader, to be honest, because when people hear recovery, usually they think of that person that's down, that's ill, that's not productive in society, that's you know, just not, well, they're just living in their addiction. And so when they hear addiction and recovery, they think, oh, they've got to go away, they've got to leave, they've got to go to a program, and and anyway. But recovery, I mean, for me, it's been so multifaceted, because it depends upon what recovery from what. um my story is, people pleasing, codependency, perfectionism, all or nothing, shopping, overbooking my calendar. It's been a lot of different relationships with food, body dysmorphia, anorexia, restricting, and as well as overindulgence, right? Like, so I had a significant addiction to sugar, and pastas and whatnot, right? So the food's been a biggie for me, and especially with that dysmorphia, that was a long, recovery journey. Now I've been free from eating disorder, so free from anorexia since the age of 26. So just about 25 years now. But that doesn't mean it isn't a constant, like I have to know exactly how to approach that mirror, right? And I also have to know, how not to approach the mirror, and when is it okay to look into the full mirror, and when do I just need enough to make sure, like, I'm not tucked in all crooked, you know but so it's very personal journey when you add in, some of these layers. But so that's been a much longer journey. Recovery from traumatic events such as sexual assaults, domestic violence, emotional abuse, things like that. That's a whole different recovery journey. And then you throw
But
in,
is it? Because now it's coming to the forefront, the connection between trauma and addiction. And it's like there's so many layers that we are going through,
yes,
you get down to, we get down to the trauma, and then sometimes there's even stuff below the trauma. There's like psychological stuff, and it's such an interesting journey. And that's why I'm in the process of writing about it, is to understand it better myself
awesome.
through the writing, because that's what happened when I wrote a book in 2011. It helped me understand what was going on. And it's taken me a long time to even understand what that first book was about. And which, yeah, I thought it was
I don't
about
mean to laugh, but I hear you, right?
I thought the first book was about jump starting my life and a total reconstruction of my life. But you know what? I reconstructed my life from the outside.
Mm,
In that was good. I mean, that's the first step. But these last 3 years for me have been about like the deep dive into really what's underlying the psychological stuff that's underlying all of the behavioral stuff. And so it's been really intense, and just even trying to get a handle on it, writing it is helping. But anyway,
it
back to
does, doesn't it, though? You just sitting down and just getting it out, right? Like, I mean,
I can't seem to do that. I mean, I have written pieces of it over the last year or so. But lately, I've been trying to put the pieces together to understand it. Like, what is the whole story about, and how do I tell it? How do I approach it to tell it? And I keep writing all these different timelines and zooming in and zooming out, and that's where I've been at. And
I relate.
do.
I totally relate. I've just got to where I've got a manifesto. And everyone's like, "Oh, you got to write a book," and I'm like, no, it would be ginormous, because I would feel like I needed to go in chronological order. So the fun that I had in writing my manifesto, which, you know, we're breaking down into a blog series, but it's in its full entirety on LinkedIn. Love them as a little
Before you
publisher.
go into it, can you share what you mean by a manifesto for people?
You know, it's kind of it's my recovery journey. I talk about 4, I talk about being 16, I talk about 12, and I go, you know, to being married, and I go back over to here. But it was so cool how it just like unfolded, because it took all the pieces, and it relates the different things. So seeing my dad be struck by lightning, you know, again, the first inappropriate sexual, whatever you want to call it, you know, at 4, and then, you know, my father being killed in an accident 1 year after coming home from recovery addiction treatment himself. You know, this is my dad that raised me. And then at 12, having him be killed on summer vacation, and then having 4 more people that were super close to me that were male die, all in the same time frame that I was actually raped, and then having that person stalk me, and then, you know, and going, you know what, I know why I picked up alcohol, because I was at my dad's funeral. I was left alone to stand over his open casket, and nobody was paying any attention, and I was just in so much shock and just sitting there. And so I'm looking at all of the grown-ups, and I'm looking at age 12, and I'm looking around, and I'm seeing them having conversation, they're interacting, they're talking, etc. So, and I see what's the common thread. It's they all have alcohol in their hands and cigarettes. Picked up a 6-pack, grabbed a pack of cigarettes, because we were, you know, in the Midwest at the time, and it was like, it was just on. And you know, and this is the way I remember it, at least. And for me, it was my reality, because again, I don't remember having much interaction with anybody in that period. I again always felt like I was on this island. I just don't have a lot of big memories of interacting. And you know, so I know, and it worked in that space. So for me, it was kind of on, and then
tying everything together to make this manifesto. And is the manifesto about, it's about the past and the future, your manifesto?
It kind of ends with where I am today, right? With talking about, you know, the coaching practices that I teach, or the life skill practices that I teach, those psychological tactics and things like that. And you know, this is kind of how I got here, and this is how all of this was created and born, was in that healing process, but also in, you know, diving into research and studies and you know, evidence-based practices, and marrying them all together. But yes, so the manifesto kind of pings around. It's short. It's like 1,600 words. It's not long, but it was a ton of fun to write. You should read it and just kind of see what I'm talking about, because it's hard to explain how you could go from 4 to 12 to, you know, back here to, you know, I think it's about midway through that I talk about, you know, playing piano at 6. I don't know.
That's the way our minds work, though, is to connect everything that seems really important, you know. But so you were 12 when things really got kind of wild in your life.
They got cattywampus for sure. Junior high school was kind of where I had my different groups, which is kind of funny, because you know, even now I teach, you know, like we have to know how to move people around, because you know, somebody that's in your nucleus here, you know, in normal situations may still need to be in your toxic circle in certain circumstances, right? and that's just saying that if I have this conversation or if I go to this thing with that person, it's not going to work out well. But, so I just totally lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
I told you I haven't been sleeping a whole lot. So
yeah, so we have both dealt with like multiple kind of addictions and compulsions. For me, it's been a lot about relationships, being compulsive in relationships, needing to have a relationship, feeling uncomfortable in relationships. Oh my God. I thought I was the only one that felt uncomfortable dating. Also about food, always, either stuffing feelings down with food. Workaholism's been a big one for me. Just working myself till I'm exhausted. And luckily that's something I got a handle on in with that first book I was telling you about, Center of Gravity. I think I have anyway. I have a much more balanced life now, but for yourself, there's always in the story, we all have in the story of addiction, a certain point where it becomes unmanageable. And then we start looking at things differently, right? So for you, like what age was that? Or was there any specific time, or was it a process?
Okay, so I had periods where, so this goes back to what I was talking about, and I never really relied on or looked up to anybody or looked for anybody for motivation, right? So with these traumatic events, sure, there was overindulgence, sure, there was inappropriate usage. I mean, again, I was junior high school, right? But I was always able to reel it in, always able to reel it in. The traumatic event would happen. I do it. I kind of get to this, I'm going to get myself in some slippery slopes, and I would, pull back out of it. Or it would be like that, almost like, going through the grieving process was too difficult. I'm just going to numb out through it and then move on when it was over, right? Like I'd pick myself up by the bootstraps and move on. So I have different periods in my life where there were bouts of sobriety. I also had a couple DUIs. And funny, they were just, never at times where I was in a bad place. They were always around my birthday. But yeah, like I went to dinner with a friend and had, a couple glasses of champagne, but got pulled over on my, anyway. But it's okay because I needed the lesson. I needed the life lesson. I don't mind that I had a couple of them, and they were all, before I was 23 years old. And, because I started so early. I also was a parent by the time I was 17, so, I had these periods where sure things would get away from me, but I could always reel it back in. And so if we fast forward, again, all those dysfunctional relationships, the domestic violence, the emotional abuse, the sexual assaults, because there were plenty of them. And then, the senseless death that I experienced with other people in my life, but also with near-death experiences of my own. And knowing that at 26, I met my husband, and I for the first time, outside of, my son that I gave birth to, knew what unconditional positive regard was. And this man showed up in my life and just, vowed to never hurt me, and became like my best friend and my companion. And I shouldn't even say the word like in there. He is still to this day my best friend, and, has just done nothing but exude unconditional positive regard for me, which allows me that space, and it was such a blessing. So in that, the alcohol still stuck around, but, it became a functioning alcoholism at that point, right? Like I reeled it in. And so when we go from 26 to 43, when I opted to get sober, the difference was this. Yes, there was ebbs and flows in the amount I was drinking. Different things happened. I mean, our oldest daughter is a cancer survivor. She had adolescent AML. And that was trying. And, we got through it. It was great. But so near-death experience for myself, right? So, which led to, um, a very early hysterectomy, and induced menopause. Or actually I had started menopause before, but anyway, my body has started attacking itself at age 18. So autoimmune, chronic endometriosis, tons of cysts, all these things. I had a near-death experience. And anyway, then we got to, the hysterectomy, and then anxiety set in. So the level of addiction that took me out was a physiological addiction that I had never experienced before, because I never had a physiological addiction. I had inappropriate drinking habits. I was a binge drinker for sure. And I was an alcoholic for sure, but I was never laying in the gutter. I was never not doing what I was supposed to do. And I was never not, like supporting myself and all of those things. But after my hysterectomy, I developed generalized anxiety disorder with panic, and then empty nest, and the things. And so my physician had prescribed me. She knew I was a daily drinker. She knew that, low level functioning alcoholic, and she prescribed me Xanax. And so over the course of 5 years, I was drinking and taking Xanax every day. And so the synergistic effects of the two of those things created a physiological addiction, to where I had to keep a steady, a steady level at all times. And I was going to sleep feeling my liver, and I was waking up extremely nauseated and shaky. And it was just ugly. And I said, I'm a control freak, right? Like, we've already identified the characteristics. And so that's when I that was for me, that place of this addiction isn't working. And that's when, I went and got stabilized. I did all the right things, right? Medical detox in a hospital setting, was monitored, went to 30-day treatment. And then I came out and said, well, social supports aren't going to work for me. But that's, a whole different ball of wax, right? That's how.
What do you mean? You felt you didn't have the support at home?
No, I just, that's me going into what I see is missing in the treatment realm, right? Like, I believe that the treatment protocols that are there are necessary, but I don't think that we afford where my passion is. And it's why my passion is, I don't believe we afford appropriate levels of assertive continuum of care.
I totally agree.
Post-acute withdrawal lasts for 2 years. And AA and NA are wonderful social supports. They aren't trained professionals to tell you how in the heck to actually get to know yourself,
right,
on the 6 different levels that we need to. They don't teach you how to fix your impulse.
The deep dive.
They don't teach you how to operate inside your environment, because you get released, you go back to the same house, the same spouse, the same kids, the same bills, the same job, the same community, the same social circles, the same environment, and you've just been gone for 30 days. And I just looked at them like, 30 days ain't undoing 30 years of conditioned ways of functioning. It's just not going to happen. So I had to, go figure it out on my own, because I wasn't going to sit in the same chair day after day and tell my story over and over.
Is that when you went to school for psychology? Mm-hmm. At that point?
I started at Saddleback University in Southern California. In the first class was, I had to learn what happened to me. Why at 43 years old did I have this physiological addiction that I never had before when I started drinking at 12, right? Like, why was I able to control it, or, at least keep it in check, right, at a functioning level my whole life? And why now? So I took the physiological effects of drugs and alcohol, right?
That was a class?
First class. Right? First class.
Dive in.
And so, and then I added another class, and I don't remember the exact order, but then I got hooked. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to get my addiction treatment counseling certification. So I did that whole program, and then, from there, I worked in every level of treatment, interning and getting my hours and all of that. But in that process, I also transitioned into my psych degree, as well as sought out an accredited coaching credentialing program where I obtained, 11 different credentials, coaching credentials to set up this whole system. And I just kept building and just kept building. And the more the things that I identified that were evidence-based practice that met the needs of all of the people I was working with myself, et cetera. And then boom, and the whole way I'm just writing and I'm creating and I'm creating and I'm creating. And when I was finished, I had a 275-page book that is now what I teach as the Building Milestones. It's my trademarked curriculum that is presented in my Live Free, Transform, Evolve, whatever.
So that's a program that people can go through.
Yeah.
The Building Milestones. Yes. So that is.
It's not called that in any of the places you can take it. It's but that's the curriculum that is embedded in the different programs, because there's different levels of coaching. There's different lengths of time of engagement. There's, there's pay as you go, slow putsy. There's brief. There's 3 months. There's 6 months. There's 9 months. And there's all in there.
Basically the philosophy and the practice that you're
right. But it also depends on your level of severity, because I'm going to assess you, right? Like if you're high severity and you want me to try to fix you in a 3-month period, like I'll give it a stab, but I'm going to tell you up front, you're going to be with me for about a year, and so there's coaching and there's, clinical engagement that needs to happen. But, but that's how it happened for me. Like that's how I created this whole lifestyle that I have. And it gets to look, feel, and be however I want it to.
It's so fascinating to me because I was working in a rehab facility from like 2017 to 19, doing creative arts wellness with them.
Oh.
So it was a program that I developed using all different kinds of art, music making, and mindfulness and yoga, meditation. They would do yoga and meditation one day a week, and they would do the creative arts on the other day of the week. And it was great while we were there, but it was not integrated very well. And the thing that I thought was really sad that you alluded to is when they would leave, they had nothing. They had none of the support, none of these practices to continue. I mean, they could pick it up if they wanted to, some of the stuff that we did, but it's just not the same as having an ongoing program for somebody to be a part of. And connection was such a big part of what we did in that program. And I would love to be a part of that again someday if it, comes back around, because I feel so strongly about it.
Well, and you're hitting the nail on the head, because and funny, but I made a post. It was this week. I don't remember which day, but there was a post, that I said, what you don't know about treatment or whatever. I forget exactly how I worded it, but it was basically, sure, treatment programs that offer, private chefs, hot stone massage, and, parachuting are all great. But, there's things you need to know, like there's medical clearance that needs to happen. Like I was never even cleared to do yoga while I was in treatment because of my physiological issues that were going on. But so if we look at that and we say, and this is why I started my program, this was the period of time where I was so passionate, because we want to, when they come in, we want to start setting up that discharge plan. And I don't see that happening, right? Day one, discharge planning needs to start happening. What do you want your life to look like? What do you want it to have incorporated in it? And then start looking and adding and building and, planning for that. But we have to have somebody that's there, and I won't say that I'm there. I'm not a sponsor, man. You're not going to call me at 9 o'clock at night and think I'm going to pick up the phone, because I have office hours, right? 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. but we still need somebody that's there that can help somebody, objectively look at the situations that happen and unfold in day-to-day life and help them understand where would be a good time to incorporate yoga. If I can't afford to go to a yoga studio, how can I find free yoga? How can I, how do I structure my days to, because I hear this all the time, I don't have time. And I'm like, BS, you don't have time. There's time in the day for anything and everything that you feel needs to happen in there. You just don't know how to set up the system right. But, so you're right on target there that, introducing that type of a practice in a program is very beneficial if it comes with that behind that package that says, this is how you're going to get to take it home with you.
Yeah. And community, being part of community is so healing and important as well. And that's something that is a missing piece. And not just going to AA meetings or NA meetings, but getting out and being healthy. I started a group down here in Florida called Social Fitness that's modeled on a concept that the Phoenix is doing. Do you know the Phoenix? It's an organization that helps people come together in recovery to do physical activities, to do fitness.
I have heard of it. My brain went straight to Phoenix House, which is a facility, a program that's usually reintegration based. So that's where my head went there because I worked there for a bit. But I love that. That's
I just think that connection is so important, and being out in nature is so important.
Esteem building activity is
that too. Yeah.
Crucial. And people think, whenever I say that, they're like, well, what do you mean self-esteem? And I'm like, I didn't say a self-esteem. I said esteem building, right? Like, because if you can enjoy something, you're naturally going to be elevated, right? You're going to not be sitting there wondering, like, what am I missing? There's not going to be, that fear of missing out. There's not going to be that social anxiety. You're going to start enjoying things. All your natural dopamines and serotonin things and receptors are all going to start going off. And then you're going to start to be able to experience joy in an organic fashion.
Absolutely. So circling back around to the concept of freedom and recovery and addiction, what comes to mind when we put these words together, connect them?
When I think about living free, to me, that's living for myself first without feeling guilty, selfish, punished, or restricted. And those words run deep, right? Because if we're talking about punished or restricted, that feeds right into, disordered eating, and as well as, drinking or whatever. But putting myself first, a lot of people that struggle with addiction, they feel guilty for being a problem, for being a burden. They feel selfish in their recovery process because what the recovery process is kind of selfish because
it has to be.
We have to put it first. But I don't really consider it to be selfish. I think that we all ought to be living for ourselves first. Because if we're caring for ourselves appropriately and in the right fashion, and we know what true life balance is, and I go through 14 categories with my clients. So there's 8 primary and 6 subcategories. But, if we're truly, right, valuing ourselves and we're living for ourselves first, so morally, ethically, and with integrity, right? And we're saying, like, I'm going to pay attention to what my limits and limitations might be. I'm going to honor my emotional needs. I'm going to honor my physical needs. I'm going to honor my, my mental capacity or whatever it is, right? Like the size of my calendar, I'm going to honor that. We're leading by good example. So we all have kids. Most of us have kids or grandchildren, but even my kids were grown adults. And I've noticed that shift because I'm leading by that different example. I don't come unglued. I listen. If I don't like what I'm hearing, I use the power of inquiry, right? Like it's, don't know how I think or feel about that. Can you help me understand this at a deeper level? And then I might even say, wow, okay, I want to sit with that for a little bit before I even come up with anything. Or I might even ask people. I generally don't offer any of this. It's not like I sit around talking like this all day long. I have to be invited into a conversation. Somebody has to tell me that they actually want to hear, because I don't even know if I said this, but I went through a significant first half of my life feeling like my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, my opinions, my beliefs, my needs, my wants, my desires, my dreams were all seen as being invalid, not holding any value, and not worthy of even talking about, hearing, or anything, right? Like I felt very dismissed
I felt that too.
My own internal dialogue. So now it's like, do you really want to hear, do you want to hear what I think or feel about this? And if they say yes, then I'll offer that to them. And if they start to push back, then I have that opportunity to be able to say, well, I asked you first. Like I didn't ask, hey, do you want to have an argument about this? I asked you if you wanted to hear what I had to say. Like, I'm okay with having a difference of opinion here, but so it's this whole freedom that I get to choose every single moment. I get to choose how I experience it. I get to choose how I see myself in those. I get to live up to my own standards, right?
Yeah, and I think part of what you're saying is about self-care, and it's also about like creating boundaries, healthy boundaries for yourself and other people in order to be free. Because I feel like we've got to kind of reparent ourselves so that we can start to create these healthy boundaries. And I don't think that that's selfish. I think the English language is a little bit limited. We should have another word to describe this.
Yeah, if I go with that, like I looked at boundaries, and for me, what mainstream USA considers to be a boundary system, to me is not. That's limits and limitations. Those are hard, fast stops, are points in which you can go no further. And that's when you say, I need to have strong, rigid boundaries with regard to this, right? Like you can't cross this boundary. That's a limit or a limitation. Boundaries are like, if you think about your goats, right? Like if you have goats, like you need to be able to move those goats from one patch of grass to the other. And you might need to change the size or the shape, but that's a boundary place, right? So I teach boundaries more as a filtration system. We work on the temporal, or the emotional, the internal, the external, and the physical, so that we can filter it, but we also could take it with us, and we know how to, it gets to be flexible, pliable, bendable, whatever, depending on the situation.
It's almost a more feminine view of boundaries in a way, a little bit more fluid and feminine, and this is the kind of thing that you help people with, right? Is to learn how to establish healthy boundaries, and fluid boundaries, and boundaries to protect themselves and to protect, protect others. So these are some of the things that you work with people with. And again, as you said, you work with people on a short-term basis or a longer basis, depending on what they need, right?
I've got clients that have been with me for over 4 years. And we went from, high severity addiction. And I generally don't, I have colleagues now that, when they're super high severity, but, they have to be stabilized to some degree. Well, and anyway, we won't get into that, but yes. So depending upon the level of severity, we talk about, but, I have clients that have been with me for over 4 years, because we started with, their reintegration process, in recovery. And then we started working on, their esteem, maybe bipolar or generalized anxiety disorder, and those social anxieties. And now we've gone into going back to school, getting jobs, getting married, planning kids, and so, and they just, we just
They're blossoming, they're flourishing. That's
So again, everybody's
fantastic.
journey is different. So I try to keep everything real fluid, and it's really about developing the level of an emotional intelligence that you need, because we all need emotion regulation. We all need distress tolerance. We all need appropriate self-soothing tactics.
These are all words that I wanted to ask you about, but yeah, we're getting them in. But one thing is I wanted to say, going back to our boundaries things, is that when we can learn how to build the good boundaries for our internal boundaries and external boundaries, that's when the freedom happens, right? That when we feel like we can maneuver in the world in a more powerful way, in a more comfortable way, that's where the freedom comes in. I think, at least it is for me.
Well, no, but you're absolutely not wrong. And it's, for me and in my practice, we learn about it early on, because you're right. It does afford people that ability to start building their own infrastructure, right? Their own thing that allows them to, feel like I'm okay, right? Like I'm okay. I know I can change this, transparent boundary system to a fortress if I need to, depending upon my situation, right? Like this could become like, the castle pillar, with all the brick, if I need it to, depending on where I'm going. And so, yes, it does afford them that ability to start feeling strong enough to move forward, and then start doing that internal seeking and searching, and then create that voice that says, it's okay to say, wow, that might be okay for you. It's not okay for me. I'm going to bow out. I'm not going to go, whatever it is we need to say. Right. Like, and not feel like they have to conform, hide, mask. What are we most of the time we're doing? We're trying to make ourselves more socially acceptable. Like we got to let go of those inhibitions.
For everybody to like us, right?
Yes.
Hasn't that been the underlying theme all along?
Yeah, one of them. Yes, for sure.
So horrible. But yes, so wonderful that you're helping people overcome that. But tell us a little bit about some of the projects that you're working on currently, and going forward, because we are coming towards the top of the hour.
I know. We could probably talk for hours, you and I. And I know I talk a lot, but but I think, that you and I have so many different synergies that it's why I love this networking group so much. It's why I love this place as a home base. And so I would love to talk to you more about your thoughts and views on treatment and some of these things that you've experienced or that you saw and that we need, because I'm very much interested and definitely want to hear more about your writing, and how I'm just interested in how you're going to put it all together, right? Like what order you're going to put it in, because I can totally relate to all of these like separate things. And now what, how do I shuffle it, right?
Yep.
But so right now I'll start with here at home at Over 40 Fearless and Free. This will be month 2 of showing up with Mastering the Drop. So Mastering the Drop, like we're just talking about real views of recovery. So I'm bringing in different ladies. I think the first time I was by myself. So I think actually this is the 3rd one. Last time I brought in a group of ladies. This next Wednesday, I'm bringing in a group of ladies, and we're just talking. And I list in the description,
it's
kind of
it's another online workshop that's happening. Do you have the date offhand?
It's next Wednesday at I think 2 o'clock.
And it's called Mastering the Drop, because drop of alcohol?
Drop of habits, any habit, negative attachment, addiction, or a habit. Like, so if you're a chronic dieter, come on in, join me, right? Like if you're constantly in a state, I got to go on this diet or that diet. The diet culture is a big pet peeve of mine.
What other ones?
I've been there.
What other people?
Yeah. Like I've learned how to create a relationship with food that I don't have to do diets. Right. And I think everybody can do that.
But what
And
other people should join this webinar? Workshop?
anybody that has a propensity of overbooking their calendar, always saying yes to other people and putting themselves in second position. Anybody that, has a problem with overspending, you go to Target and you go in for 3 things and you inevitably come out with 25 things not on your list. Anybody that feels like they have to be in the gym 6 days a week, 3 hours a day. Anybody that feels like they have any kind of controlling something in their life. Like if you feel like you get home from work at night and you can't just sit down on the couch and put your feet up and read a book, like you have to find like this extra burst of energy to make it through because you're the female of the house and it's your role to cook, clean, and do the laundry after work. Yeah, we got to talk. So come on in, right? So it's negative attachments, right? And because I've studied again the process, the behavioral, and the chemical addiction. So I don't want people to think like it's just alcohol, marijuana, or illicit drugs or prescriptions. Like it's not. It's so much bigger than that. Because usually what I find is I remove that alcohol, and I still got the over shopping, overbooking, people pleasing, control needs, all of that's still there. And they're just addictions, right? It's all addictions. We're all seeking something outside of ourselves to bring us
Yeah, I
peace,
was going
joy,
to ask
comfort.
you, is there a healthy coping mechanism?
We have to learn how to get out of our external locus of control and move into an internal. And that's a theory that changed my life when I learned that in school. It changed my life. That was like my big aha.
And feeling the feelings instead of pushing them down or pushing them
Yeah.
aside. Yeah.
Right. Because you can.
So
So what else do I have going on? Super quick. I have the Women's Foundation conference is not this weekend, but next weekend, Friday, Saturday. It's going to be an amazing lineup of there's 32 of us that are coming in, and it's short. It's just a few hours on Friday and a few hours on Saturday. But just about anything you could possibly want to talk about, like from finance to what I do, right? So a lot of really good women there. I am doing a Teaching Tuesday on Lead Up for Women next week. I'll be here on Wednesday. Come join. If you jump in on the Zoom, you can actually do Q&A with us after, or you can just watch live.
Is there a way for people to get involved with you to kind of try things out?
Yeah. If somebody wanted to test out what they, to see what my program's all about, I actually am running a special right now, and I've posted it here a few times in a few of the different,
We can post it in this too. We can post it.
I'll put it in the comments. I'll put, how you can find me outside of here, but whatever. But I am, for the month of March, I'm offering, I think I set it up for 14 days for free access to a 3-part video series that is really a very introductory view of the work that I do. So it's giving you what you need to know. Again, you're going to be on your own trying to figure out how to, dive in deeper, but it's an amazing little short video series. And I think that it's just 3, and I think they're each about a half hour long. And so you have access to those. So I'll drop that in there. You can sign up. You can sign up for free. You also will be given the opportunity to in that have an invitation to have a chat with me. Also,
that's fantastic.
I'm celebrating my 8 years. So
8 years of business. 8 years of
8 years on this journey. So no, I 5.5 years now in business, but 8 years chemical substance free, but really just on this journey,
Okay. 8 years. Excellent.
Yeah.
Tricia, what is your website? What's the address of your website if people want to go find out more information? We'll also put it in the
I'll put it in there because they're long, and my name's not easy to spell. But so there's Turning Leaves, LEAVES, recovery.com. And then there's triciaparido.com. Turning Leaves has everything that I've been sharing with you today on it. TriciaParido.com has more of information about speaking engagements, press, publications, things like that. But my healthy living videos are in there. So if you want to just kind of check out my thoughts about healthy living, you can get a free 7-day food mood journal. You can listen to healthy living tips right there on that website. So, I like them both.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. It was nice spending time with you, getting to know you a little bit better. And I feel like we have more to talk about. So maybe we'll have you back again at some point. That would be awesome. If you
I'm always down. I'm always down. I mean, I do have, a talk that I think, a conversation that we can have that I think would be very beneficial for everybody. And that's, having a conversation about what it means to add, edit, delete. So how you can take any self-improvement journey and add, edit, delete, make it your own, and have it become lifelong, manageable, and maintainable for you. Because I think what we try to do is we try to fit our life into, I don't know, Tony Robbins, whoever it might be. We try to fit our life into their method, and that doesn't ever work. That's why we don't get the results we want. We have to learn how to take their method. I teach everybody how to take my method, and so we have to add, edit, delete, and incorporate it into yours. So that might be a fun one to have.
Yeah,
So,
that sounds great too. We'll see
yeah.
how we can do that.
Yeah. Well, we also need to come back and talk about your writing.
Yes, maybe when I'm a little bit further along. Yep.
I'm going to keep hounding you because now I want to know the story.
Yeah, it's a really good story, that's for sure. It's entertaining too.
Well, and I'm interested. I want to hear your story.
Yeah, I think it's going to help a lot of women because it's really next level, helping people get to the next level by doing this deep dive. I don't know, it's my story. So I'm hoping that by reading it and somebody walking, for someone to read about me walking through this thing that I've been through in the last 3 years, it'll help them gain some insights and, take their life to the next level, whatever that means. But really, really let's just get to the basics, the bottom line. We want to get to what's holding us back, right?
Well, sure, but I think if you write it for yourself and tell yourself what you need to hear yourself say, which is acknowledging all of your accomplishments, celebrating them, and in doing so, you have to talk about why you needed to have those accomplishments. But I think in that, whoever understands that language is going to receive every gift that you want to give them, and that in itself is going to be the gift, right? We can't write it. We can't write our stuff for other people. We can, because we don't know who's listening. We don't know who's reaching out. I know I'm an acquired taste. I totally get that, right? Like not everybody gravitates to me, and I don't speak everybody's language, right? But the people that come in, there's a reason why I have over 95% success rate, because the only people that come in understand what I'm talking about. Like they're like, oh shit, I want that. Oh,
for you.
Oh shoot, I want that. And so you just gotta stay genuine to yourself.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell what happened. Tell this amazing story of the last 3 years.
Yay! I'm excited.
But anyway, thank you so much, and we will look forward to seeing you next week in the group. Live. And,
we will be
everybody here. Connect with Tricia, get to know her in the group. Feel free to ask any questions and she'd be happy to answer them, I'm sure. I'd be happy to answer any questions too. And here's to being fearless and free, ladies.
Yay!
Bye.
Bye.